Hi, welcome to Between Two Speakers. My name's Randy Ford. I'm a writer and storytelling strategist for First Story Strategies.
And I'm Mariana Swallow. I'm a public speaking coach and instructor of business and professional speaking at Loyola University. Today, we're here to share with you some best practices for speaking, but also what goes on behind the scenes. And Randy, one area that you're really strong in because you've had to do it in a few venues is repurposing your content. Can you tell us a little bit about why we should think to repurpose our content, but also how it benefits you as the speaker or presenter?
Yeah, absolutely. So this really, I had to learn this tool, whether I wanted to or not, back when I was a reporter in radio. I was covering politics in Tennessee, which is where I'm from. And every time that I would file a story from the state capitol, I had to file it. And then so I would file the story, blah, blah, blah. The Senate is going to vote on it Tuesday. Randall Ford, Tennessee Radio Network News. 3, 2, 1. In Nashville, I'm Randall Ford, Memphis, News Radio 600 WREC. And you had to file it all these different ways because that same story needed to go out to all these different audiences. Later, I got into politics and working with candidates. You have to very similarly take a little bit of information and create all of the different communications products that you have to do for that. So you may just have the opportunity to hear one speech, and then that becomes a blog and a press release and something that you remember as your principal's position on something. So there again, out of necessity, that content has to be repurposed. Now, when it comes to speaking, one thing that kills me, having had that mindset of, just using everything down to the final words that you can recycle. When I go to a conference or any kind of big event, it hurts me to see all of the PowerPoints that I know are just going to wither away. They're going to be stuck on that random flash drive somewhere that's going to end up in the bottom of a bag. It's never going to be looked at again. And so much work went into that. If it's a big conference, we may have 100 speakers. Thousands of hours went into putting together that material that then just goes nowhere beyond that 45-minute session. So as a speaker, I always try to encourage people to hold on to that. Is that podcast material? Is it newsletter material? Is it stuff for your the next time you speak? It almost certainly is. And it's really rough when things have to be kind of restarted from scratch.
Yeah, no, you're right. And especially I know sometimes depending on the conference, it's not always a paid gig either. But what about, and I know you and I have both seen instances of this because we're both in the storytelling scene in Chicago, not naming names, but what about repurposing the content, but not making it the exact same thing you did last time? Because there might be this professional who goes to two conferences and he sees you giving the exact same talk. How do you avoid that? Or how do you keep it top of mind as a way to freshen up without having to do thousands of hours of work again?
Yeah. And, even just on a personal level, I think those of us who speak often, we often have thoughts that are written in speech form. We sometimes have very clear thoughts that are worded a certain way. And my best friend sometimes will tell me, "You have already told me that, and you used the same words." And so there is that stuff that we automatically repurpose.
Well, and now you're making me think about how often I do that to my husband, and especially over the dinner table, to be like, yeah, I know you met the client and then you guys went out to lunch. I'm like, but wait, let me finish. And he has heard the same story.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of us who do a lot of speaking and content development who we think that way. We think, we come up with the way that something is to be said. But you're right. The problem with that you run into is people being tired of it. Aaron and Kevin, as examples, just flipping to it can really be tiring for your audience just thinking of those anecdotally and then extrapolating that. So then what, in your mind, not the dinner table conversation necessarily, but in general, what do you do and recommend to adapt that?
Couple of things. So the first thing I think of is, and I will use his name because it's a great example, Jake Cowan, who produces Is This a Thing? He is a wonderful example of a
Which we
storyteller.
should tell people is a great storytelling show here in Chicago.
Yes, yes, yes. Is This a Thing is a wonderful storytelling show in Chicago, and they're very open and encompassing. People who've never told a story before can join and tell a story. People who are seasoned veterans like yourself have told stories there. But what I like about Jake and his style is if he does want to tell a story at another venue, what he does is he gives himself a different directive. A good example is you were a storyteller alongside him at Filet of Solo this year, and he told a story that I'd heard before, but it was probably a minute or two in before I was like, wait a minute, I think this is the one about when he went out all night. And the way he was able to repurpose that content so it was still interesting for me, and it was interesting. My husband was there, he agreed that was interesting. He's like, yeah, that was great, I didn't even remember that last time. What Jake does is he uses a different theme. So the night that you and Jake were telling at Filet of Solo, I believe the theme was time. Whereas the first time I heard the story, the theme he was using, he was piggybacking off a phrase from the movie Say Anything, which is the dare to be great moment. So he kind of, when he first told the story, saw the evening as a chance for him to dare to be great for the whole night by going out and doing things he had never done before. But when he told the story alongside you, he was seeing it in the context of time, and he had just come back from a business trip, didn't really want to do much that night, and he just kind of kept going with the theme of time through the whole thing. And I was engaged the whole time. I wasn't thinking, oh, wow, I've heard this before. I wasn't. I was like, wow, what happened next? So switching the theme is a good way to do it. I'll show you an example real quick. These slides that I'm sharing with you, this is an Ignite presentation that I have presented 4 times since 2011. The first time I presented this was at a conference in Canada called Podcasters Across Borders. After that, I presented it at Ignite. And let me go back to the slide. This is the slide I want to talk about. And then after that, I presented it at Loyola to one of my speaking classes. And a way that I repurpose this content, believe it or not, I have switched up the slides. I'm not much of a designer. So yes, in my slides, you are going to see some of the generic templates. But a really important aspect to pay attention to is what's going on at the time or what has changed since you last presented this. My example here is Michael Chabon. I tell the story on this slide of how when he published The Mysteries of Pittsburgh, he was fresh out of grad school. It was a surprise hit, and that made his career as a writer. So he sat down to write his next book, which he calls his wrecked novel, because he spent something like 5 or 7 years writing the book. It became 1,500 pages, and he realized it was garbage. So he completely scrapped it, started again, but the book he wrote after that was The Wonder Boys, which was also successful and became a movie. So when I usually illustrate this, I talk about the wrecked novel and say, so it's okay to do something bad. He never published it. He threw it out, blah, blah, blah. Well, in 2019, he actually did publish his wrecked novel, more as a curiosity for his fans. But I couldn't keep saying that in my presentation anymore. And I had to update it, but also keep the point that what came next was far better than the wrecked novel. So that's the example I like to share.
Yeah, so you didn't just scrap that altogether and stop
Correct.
talking about it. You adapted and repurposed with the adaptations.
Yeah, I had to modify the story. But I presented this talk at Loyola this year, and I really would have hated it if I said, oh yeah, Michael Chabon wrote this 1,500-page novel, never published it, it was garbage, he threw it out. And then, because again, it was a curiosity, Esquire wrote about it, I'd hate for someone in the audience to go, well, yeah, actually he did publish it in 2019. So yeah. I don't want to ever, I don't want to be lazy, but also I don't want to do anything that's a disservice to my audience.
So now hopefully today we've been able to give people some idea of how to repurpose, why to repurpose, and the pitfalls of doing it the wrong way.
Yes. Anything else you want to say before we say goodbye to our audience?
No.
All right.
Thanks for doing this.
Well, we're Between Two Speakers. I'm Mayor Swallow.
I'm Randy Ford, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.